Back from Washington, D.C., with a visit to Strategy and Capitol Hill. Lots to discuss on the global macroeconomic front. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Bitcoin Layer. I'm Nick Bhatia, joined once again by our associate, Demian Schott. Demian, great to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
All right, Demian, let's get into your questions for the day.
Well, the biggest thing is what happened yesterday between Elon Musk and Donald Trump? Why were they clashing over the budget bill? What was going on?
Yes, Demian, upon landing from my trip across the country, I saw your message in the Slack, and I really couldn't believe some of the things I was seeing. Yes, I did expect this relationship to expire at some point, but quite dramatic what we saw yesterday. Now, it's still a little early to know what happened, of course, and what the result of this might be. But let's start at what might be the most interesting component of this, which is Musk going directly after Trump for his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, bringing up old newspaper articles and quotes from Trump about his association with Epstein. We also heard Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, earlier this year, talking about what nightlife was like with Donald Trump back in the day. So something that has been out there, we knew that Trump did have a relationship with Epstein, and finding out that the Trump name in the Epstein files is what might have prevented some of that disclosure. And yes, it is June, almost 6 months after Trump has taken office. So, and we still haven't seen a lot of the remaining parts of those files. So very, very interesting developments. I know your question was on the bill, but I think it's important that first and foremost, we bring up Jeffrey Epstein. It's something that has been part of our coverage at TBL, even though it's not a direct global macroeconomic phenomenon. The Jeffrey Epstein story is highly tied to geopolitics and high finance. And so we follow that story. And any development on that story, I think, is important to cover. It is, again, too early to know what some of these details are as they just come out yesterday. On the bill has been highly criticized from parts of the Republican Party for having an insane amount of pork. Said otherwise, not having any of the budget deficit reductions that were part of, not directly, but part of the platform of the campaign, as well as part of the platform from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent earlier this year, when he said that we need to bring deficits down so that we can bring inflation down, so that we can bring interest rates down. And that's why the bill matters to us as analysts, is that we know that aggregate spending, especially aggregate deficit spending, which is then monetized in part by banks when they grow their balance sheets to accommodate more treasury bills basically in the market. And a one-to-one expansion of the monetary system when banks add bills to their balance sheet and pair it off with the deposits of the recipients of the stimulus money, or I should just say the fiscal spending itself. So when a person or a company is a customer of a bank and they receive a government payment at their bank can then go and buy treasury bills with that accounting entry and grow the bank's balance sheet. And that is credit expansion 101. It's a topic we've covered for the last 12 to 18 months, I would say, at TBL as we go through our T-chart exercises, taking from a lot from interviews with Michael Howell and Andy Constant last year, if people want to go check out those episodes. And also an episode that was mentioned to me by a reader in Washington, D.C. that we did with Britik Goyle earlier in the past 12 months or so on accounting balance sheet expansion exercises. Stop asking how to value Bitcoin and start asking how to value everything else in terms of Bitcoin. A new report from Unchained and Strive reframes the way that we think about capital allocation and equity valuation. Repricing the economy in Bitcoin introduces a Bitcoin-denominated DCF model, discounted cash flow model, that changes how we value everything. Download the report at unchained.com/TBL. Unchained.com/TBL. The Financial Freedom Report is a free weekly newsletter from the Human Rights Foundation. It tracks how authoritarian regimes are weaponizing money to control their populations and suppress dissent. It also spotlights how technologies like Bitcoin are helping everyday people reclaim their financial independence and freedom. A one-of-a-kind newsletter connecting the dots between financial repression, geopolitics, and emerging technology. Smart macro analysts don't just watch the Fed, they watch the world. Go to financialfreedomreport.org to sign up for the free newsletter. Blockstream Jade Plus is the easiest, most secure way to protect your Bitcoin. Perfect for beginners and pros alike. With a sleek design, simple setup, step-by-step instructions, you'll be securing your Bitcoin in just minutes. Seamlessly pair with the Blockstream Green app on mobile or desktop for smooth onboarding. And if you want more security, Jade Plus supports multi-sig wallets with apps like Blockstream Green, Electrum, Sparrow, and Spectre. Protect your Bitcoin, sleep better, and stack harder. Use code TBL for 10% off. Go to store.blockstream.com. Use code TBL for 10% off. So on the bill, what we see is an enormous amount of spending that reinforces this expansion of the monetary system. That's what we take away from it. But what is the general public taking away with it and out from it? And I would throw Elon Musk right in there, is that it's not cutting spending. And that was a big part of his attachment to the Trump Association, to the Trump administration. And what you really see here is, I'm going to be careful to not criticize Elon as a person in any way, but it's an example of seeing how the way that he focuses can be viewed as schizophrenic to the outside. And so what his attention is on from moment to moment is beyond what any of us can try to guess. And what we can see here is over the past week, he has had a fit over the lack of correspondence between what was part of the campaign, what he campaigned on stage for, what he even promised verbally to the people of the United States. I'm going to cut the deficit, and I'm going to find ways to cut spending. We flagged that he already had failed at that going back 30 to 60 days. It was looking like he was running into trouble and that he wasn't going to be able to execute it. While Trump might have had fiscal deficit as part of his agenda, he didn't make it that much a part of his central agenda. What was, though? Main Street versus Wall Street. And I want to talk about Main Street versus Wall Street in a little bit. But my takeaway is that the bill is political and will be managed by the House Republicans, the Senate Republicans, and the president's economic staff. Elon Musk is not in that equation. So he's not actually involved. He's not a lawmaker. He's not part of the cabinet. He's not an economic advisor. So he has definitely had a fit over it. And That's basically my initial takeaway, Damian. Whether I think the bill in its current form will pass, well, based on my conversations, this week in DC, I can tell that there are parts of the GOP that want less spending in this budget. And they're trying to find a way to take some of the deficit down, some of the spending out. They're trying to find a way, and I do not know if they can pull it off.
Mhm. It's interesting that you bring up the mainstream versus Wall Street. I want to clarify now because I'm seeing mixed things. Is it that they're spending too much in this bill, or is it that the tax cuts are too large and that's what's causing the deficit?
That's a great question. It's an excellent question. We know that the CBO scoring is a corrupted system. So I don't want to opine on it for that reason, as well as I don't actually know the math on how they have scored this deficit increase. What I do understand is that the scoring system itself isn't really a great way to monitor it. And that might be part of the problem. And the administration perhaps needs to be doing a better job at communicating that if it is part of the main problem. But on the tax cuts versus the spending, it's a good question, but the efficiency side of it, which is the Musk thing, and that's your first question, the efficiency side, it does appear to be missing. And I poked fun at the fact that they didn't even get to Medicare and Medicaid. Doge didn't get there. And I cannot excuse that. So I don't know I don't know whose fault that is. Why wasn't Doge able to go and tackle CMS, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services? And everybody knows that Medicare is essentially the number one line item on the budget, right? It's defense, Social Security, Medicare, and interest now, and they're all competing for the top spot on what we spent our money on. So we know, we've covered it a lot. Defense is part of the reordering. It's part of it. And Trump did not run on let's cut the Social Security or the benefits. I'm sorry, any state of social welfare, right? That safety net that countries like China completely lack. I'm going to pause and just bring up China for a second, Damian, because it's important. People need to understand this. They criticize China for being too much of a savers economy, not spending enough. And by they, I mean U.S. policymakers even. You see policymakers saying to China, you need to get your country to spend more. They're saving too much. You're still dependent on exports. You need to be more consumption driven. But they don't give the people a safety net. They don't have Social Security. They don't have health care to fall back on. They just have rations and subsidies and, they buy political vote. They basically buy political cachet by handouts in China. Whereas in the United States, the welfare state it's already well entrenched. So at the margin, you might be able to, let's see where we can get marginal reduction in food stamps by making people prove that they're looking for a job. That sounds like common sense to someone like you and me. Now, the left and right will turn it into a political football that you're cutting benefits. No, we're not. And it turns into that. But there's the marginal stuff you can do actually on the budget to make it more efficient. You can also, we'll have to wait a year or so to understand if this is true or not, but you have to take dead people off of the Social Security payroll. If they're dead, they shouldn't be getting the money. And if they have passed away, who is cashing those checks? Under what So I don't know if it's true or not. Okay, maybe one of our viewers or readers can show us the evidence if Musk was telling the truth or not on taking people that are deceased off of Social Security. So there are things, but I know, I know a decent amount about the healthcare system and how the money is spent, and it can be done more efficiently. That much I know for a fact. Am I advocating for a cut to benefits when I say I know it can be done more efficiently? No, but they never got there. So why? And whose fault was it that they didn't get there? Is it Musk? Is it the lawmakers? Was it the executive branch? Meaning Trump said, don't go there, don't even do it. I'm not approving of you going or even, touching Medicare because my party might get voted out because the left might use it against me. You see how political it gets? How quickly? So you see why Musk might have gotten annoyed, let's say mildly. Yeah. Annoyed to the point where you quote tweet the newspaper article in which Trump actually says, and we've known this line for years, since the Trump won, that he said, Jeffrey, he's a fun guy, but he likes them younger than I do. We've all known this, actually. I'm not excusing it, right? I don't want you or others to think that I'm excusing the president of what he might have done in the past. That's not really what we are here to do. We mentioned Epstein because it's coming back. And now Trump is has to figure out what he's going to do there. But it's childlike behavior, and childlike in that they both show it. I mean, we've seen Trump 1 and Trump 2 is we've talked about this on the show. I've written about it a little bit more for the pros at thebitcoinlayer.com/subscribe. If you guys really want to see where our core thoughts are in real time, you guys got to become pros. It's really a fun community that we're building over there at the Bitcoin Layer. But we talked about Grandpa Trump as 2.0. Grandpa Trump wasn't 1.0. Trump 1.0 is described by a phrase that I'm not even going to say on this channel. The vulgar one, okay, that he became famous for during that campaign, that he had some recording that they picked him up saying something about, and that's what he was known for, Trump 1. It's vile. It's vulgar. Trump 2 was Grandpa Trump almost assassinated, right? And I've said this before, privately to the team, but yes, I do feel gratitude, and I think about it quite a bit, that Trump's life was spared when his ear was shot. So I think about that a lot too. And so life is full of conflict, Demian, and trying to sort through it. You ask a question about Trump and Elon and the big, beautiful bill, and it opens up this can of worms where we really have to almost get philosophical about it and thinking about it in a lot of different ways. But I do love my nation. And so when I think about the path forward and what's happening and what happened yesterday and all that, I do have to remind myself that Elon is not part of this government. And I think that's where this story will trend toward.
Mm-hmm. It's a little hard to know where the truth is sometimes. President Trump was saying taxes will be raised 68% if he doesn't get this through. Is that true? That has to be an exaggeration.
I'm sure it's an exaggeration, Demian. And that's politics. And actually, Trump. So one of the things I've been doing, I'm glad you brought this up. One of the things I've been doing lately is trying to understand the psychology of world leaders going back hundreds and thousands of years even, and to try to step into the, not step into their shoes, but try to compare Trump to other powerful people in the past. So studying power and studying the psychology of rulers. And yes, he's a two-time president and is being credited with one of the greatest political comebacks in United States history. So why was he able to do that? It's because he's good at politics. So you have to give credit where credit is due. So if the guy's good at politics, he's won 2 separate presidential elections, then you analyze what he does and try to ascribe the success from maybe some of the habits that he exhibits. So one of them is something that in the markets in general, we call baffle with bullshit. And when I think about him, and when people describe him also, how, number one, how whip smart he is. He's highly capable. He also apparently doesn't read books. He watches TV. He doesn't read books. So he's smart in it, but a different type, right? I don't think anybody would accuse Barack Obama of not reading books and watching too much TV, right? So you have to compare styles of leadership and styles of powerful people also. So anyway, Trump, as a very smart person and politically capable, has found a path to victory by identifying with the common man. So when he says stuff, it's meant to basically baffle the most people possible. It's meant to rile up the people that are against him and rile up the people that support him. And he just throws so many things out, and he hops from clause to clause. He doesn't really speak in complete sentences. And what I think that is important is that he doesn't speak in circles either. And even though he might outright lie about the numbers, when his narrative comes through, I don't think he's trying to insult the intelligence of Main Street. I actually think he's just trying to insult the press and the left. And so he does what he can to insult the press and the left as much as he can, with a little bit more of a Grandpa Trump vibe this time around. And that in this country, it really is part of the First Amendment to be able to engage in whatever type of rhetoric, is not, as long as it's not harmful to others. And so that's where the line is. And I think politics today is so charged up because people don't know where the line is for the next guy, and it leads to a lot of internal strife in the country. And I think the country suffers because of that, but I don't think that is Donald Trump's fault.
Now, this might be out of my own curiosity, but you're an economist and I'm studying economics as an undergrad, but I'm noticing how much we have to cover what is going on in politics on this channel. Has economics and politics been so intertwined? Are they usually so intertwined? Is this a new thing that we always have to cover economics in the context of what's going on in politics?
It's a good question. For many years, whether the left or the right was in charge, it really has contributed to the level of the stock market or the level of budget deficits, the level of inflation. They do tend to move sometimes with politics, and it's more accentuated now because of the size of the deficit and the reliance of the economy on the spending. So this is the Lynn Alden thesis that fiscal dominance is not just the interest payments being high and eating up the tax revenue. It's not just that. That is a part of it. Fiscal dominance means that the fiscal spending, it also means that the spending itself on aggregate is the driver. And so if it goes up or it goes down, the market will go up or down because the fiscal deficit is the driver. So, yes, we are talking about politics more, but I believe we are talking about politics more, not because of left versus right budgetary stuff. I believe because we are in an event that is perhaps trying to unwind 50 to 70 years, I should say 50 to 80 years of global order. And so, what are some of those dates that we might be trying to unwind? And this is an important thing, Demian, because your question is basically why does politics matter so much? And I know you call me an economist, but I'm not. I'm just a market practitioner. I'm just a markets practitioner. And that's what I am. I do financial markets. I'm a capital markets practitioner. I don't consider myself an economist because it's a science. My science is price. And my practice is not economics. My practice is price analysis. I roll in economic analysis to it, right? It's not that I ignore economics, but it's part of my framework. Economics is part of my framework and what we do, right? So to that, that's just to clarify, but the important thing is that as a markets practitioner, whether the left or the right is in control and what they're bickering about in Congress has oftentimes, to me, resulted in a price narrative that might be completely independent or the opposite even of what's going on in Washington. So I'm looking at the price, and the price tells me, hey, market's good or market's bad. I don't need to pay attention to Washington. It's more like backfill almost. And for certain times of the political cycle, I don't even know the name. It's funny to admit, I don't even know the name of the the top people in Congress or in the Senate that are ahead of this or that committee, the majority leader and all that. Yeah, Speaker of the House, you kind of always know who the speaker is, but sometimes I'm not even paying attention to it at all because price is, going to tell me what I need to know. And rates, right? Rates, the yield curve, these things tell me what I need to know. I don't need Washington to spell it out for me. I never really have needed it. But the current administration seems to be unwinding 50 to 80 years of policy. So what are those dates? Number one, the Bretton Woods Conference of 1944. This put gold and the US dollar and the rest of fiat currencies in a strict hierarchical relationship with each other. In 1971, the link between dollar and gold was broken, and by 73, currencies were floating against each other. In 1975, you had the first version of the Basel Accords after the fall of Bankhaus Herstatt in 1974, which basically froze the international financial system upon the awareness that the Eurodollar system had grown to a size that the onshore system couldn't even fathom. And the uncertainty froze the system. So the last date that people need to know is the entry of China into the World Trade Organization in 2001. So we are talking about 25, 50, and 75-year periods of an economic global order. And just because 1973 currencies started to float against each other and the dollar wasn't linked to gold, it didn't mean that the dollar wasn't above other fiat in the monetary hierarchy. In fact, the Treasury instrument itself replaced gold. And that is now ties back to the economic agenda of the current administration, per Dr. Stephen Myron and his speech on April 7th, 2025, in which he outlined the agenda of the administration to be one that takes back or reduces, that's the key, reduces the role of the U.S. Treasury security at the top of layered money. And if you are doing that, you are changing everything. And so why do we watch politics in 2025? Because it's a global reordering that we can specifically tie to the World Trade Organization acceptance of China in 2021 and the Bretton Woods Agreement itself in 1944, and in many ways, the Saudi deal between the Treasury and the Crown and mortgage-backed securities also into the fold, where they are essentially using the Treasury security as their gold of the petrodollar system. Now that you now you can understand the energy policy. Why do they want us to drill more? Why do we want to drill? Why do we want Canada? Why do we want Greenland? Oil going out, not coming in so that we ship dollars out. Because if we ship dollars out, what do they use as their first layer money? US Treasuries. They buy it back. So it seems actually this is what confuses people. They can't follow how all these things can be true at the same time. That we're actually trying to reduce the role of treasuries as the first layer of money, but we're trying to extend the life of treasuries by making the stablecoin bill, SLR reform, which is allowing banks to own more treasuries without capital charge. They're all related. Bitcoin. Bitcoin is at the middle of this. But most people don't see it yet. Bitcoin is involved in the reduction of a reliance of treasuries as first layer money. The gold price, where it is today versus 6 months ago versus 12 months ago, already tells you this. And here's what's breaking my brain a little bit, but less so because I'm more conditioned to it. But when you tell this to others, it really is shocking to them. You show them actually that the gold price started to move long before it was obvious that Donald Trump was returning to office. Which means that the agenda to move the United States into a new global order in which the arrangement of the global monetary system is altered. It's not the same. It's different. It's going to have gold and Bitcoin playing more of a role. Exactly what? We don't know yet. But yes, more of a role. That all of that is related. And it is likely to be a nonpartisan issue. That's what is interesting. So, people talk about the puppet masters and who's pulling the strings behind the scene. This episode itself is not about that, but an agenda for the country that goes across left and right can be seen from the beginning of this nation, and we are still seeing it today. So while Trump might have been the trigger as well as the electorate, we might have always been going this way anyway, because the nation needs it to survive. And that's really the key. The Triffin's dilemma of having the world's reserve currency has not been solved, in that how can we have the world's reserve currency and not fall into this trap of overspending so that people can stockpile US Treasuries as the reserve asset. How can we get out of it? No one has solved it. So we're seeing an unwind of it. And if the United States wouldn't have survived without this unwind, can we really attribute the beginning of the unwind to a left versus right debate? The gold price tells you maybe not. Common sense would tell me that yes, it was the trigger, but I want to challenge people to think outside of the box. So that's why I mention, this bipartisan. It's not even bipartisan. It's just national strategy, domestic strategy, and survival of a nation state. Thanks for watching this episode of the Bitcoin Layer. We hope that you learned a lot. Please submit your questions to us. Don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms. Rate and review on your favorite audio platform, of course. And if you want to become a TBL Pro, thebitcoinlayer.com/subscribe. With Demian Schott, I'm Nick Bhatia. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you, guys.